Leave it to Boots Riley to deliver the bootsiest of Rileys every time we get a new project from him. I Love Boosters is officially my first 5-star rating for the 2026 season.
What's a booster? Somebody that steals clothes from the store and sell it at a discount price?
It's like community service.
Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. If you watch my channel on even a semi-regular basis, you will already know this was going to be the first new video I worked on after getting back from my trip, because I've been telling people in multiple other videos I've previously posted that Boots Riley's I Love Boosters has been one of my most anticipated films of 2026, and that I really wanted to review it, but also I was going to be away during its initial theatrical release. Imagine my stress when I was checking the theater times when I was nearing the date of my return, and I saw that the amount of showings had significantly dropped off. If you haven't already seen it and it is released in your area and hasn't left yet, don't miss out on watching this on the big screen. If it has not or will not release in your area, I do hope that you will support it whenever and however it becomes accessible to you eventually. A cheeky rental on VOD, buy it on physical media, whichever method you prefer. I Love Boosters is heavily focused on many moving parts of the fashion industry. Given Boots Riley's unapologetic propensity to directly confront and dissect wide-reaching socio-political issues through his art, if you've watched even one of his other projects, you should have some sense of what to expect here. What are some of the major issues with the fashion industry that get addressed in this film? For one, the stealing of art or designs, or more broadly speaking, culture from the Black community, or in the case of this film, one specific Black woman. The exploitation of workers who do the actual labor to assemble the clothing that gets marked up and sold for a profit by a US corporation that consistently outsources its labor to countries in the global south or anywhere that's been decimated by the Imperial Corps for the financial gain of billionaires. I knew that Boots Riley wouldn't let me down with this movie. My instincts were telling me that this was going to end up being one of my favorite films of the year, and thus it was bound to claim a spot in my top 10 of 2026. And I was right. This is a 5-star movie, and I bestow that 5 stars with the utmost enthusiasm. Because I was away, traveling, and thus I've not been able to review this until quite late from its initial release, my brain is also a bit turned around from some wicked jet lag right now. I'm going to be a bit more brief than I would have preferred to be.
I can bob and weave. Christy Smith stole my design.
What? Just as a reminder for anyone who's new here, I requested a screener for this film months ago. They didn't give me one, but regardless of the inconvenience, my anticipation was far too high for me to simply skip reviewing it during its far too short theatrical release. The first part of this review will have minimal spoilers, and then we will be switching over to full spoilers. I Love Boosters tells the story of a group of women who are robbing stores around the Bay Area that are part of the fashion chain called Metro Designers. The name Boosters refers to the practice of stealing these expensive high-end clothes and selling them at a significantly lower cost than the brand would have sold them for, but since the Boosters had stolen the clothes, it's still going to be a profitable, albeit risky, endeavor for those boosters. Metro Designers is run by billionaire Christy Smith, portrayed by Demi Moore. The group of boosters we follow are known as the Velvet Gang and are referred to as such on the news whenever they report on the latest shoplifting incident in yet another Metro Designers store. At the most surface level glance, I Love Boosters already significantly outperforms the vast majority of films I've seen this year because I happen to love maximalism and a high color saturation that invokes the nostalgic feeling of watching Technicolor classics. Whether it's the numerous costumes, hair, makeup, sets, props, cinematography, any and all visual aspects of this film look incredible. That being said, it's not just the fact that there's this more is more approach to the overall visual presentation, it's also the attention to detail. A great deal of what we see in the film are things that have been achieved through practical effects. You can look online for any number of behind-the-scenes clips and see a considerable amount of sets and props and any number of various equipment that was used to make everything come across as so much more real on screen. The significance of this cannot be understated. I am not an anti-VFX person if it's being used as an extension of the artistic process, as opposed to being a rushed, underfunded shortcut that corporations and greedy business folks force in order to cut corners instead of using money where they should, which is to pay highly skilled artists to do the best work that they're capable of doing. The story itself is well balanced in how, if you have this group of boosters whom we follow and root for, but all the while we're threading numerous topics and issues that bring more depth and layers, so that there's a lot to contemplate and analyze, that's the sort of thing that lends itself well to rewatching. You can potentially unlock new revelations about all that the story has to offer, and with all of the fun, charm, and bold visual style that this has, you're going to undoubtedly have loads of fun when doing those rewatches. You know that it's a Boots Riley film when you've got a character name-dropping dialectical materialism. Boots Riley's signature style and substance is on full display with a vibrant kaleidoscope of bold characters, practical effects, thoughtful political callouts, and tremendous fun. Keke Palmer is the top-billed star as Corvette, and she more than proves what most of us already know, which is that she's a star. Her public persona as a celebrity is far more humorous than Corvette's journey is, as Corvette is often emotionally grounding the film, since she's the protagonist, and thus there is a certain amount of emotional investment that the story has to maintain with her. I want to remind everyone one last time to support I Love Boosters before we get into spoilers. I had some folks in my comments saying that it hadn't been released in the cinemas in their own countries. Understandable that you wouldn't have seen it yet if that's the case. I would simply say to show the film support whenever it does release in your area, or buy or rent the film on digital or physical media depending on how the film ends up becoming accessible to you.
In fashion, humanity is our canvas. But the Velvet Gang is reducing our margins.
Now I would like to talk more about a few bits with full spoilers. I remembered making a note while I was early on in watching I Love Boosters where the visual style reminded me of Le Fabuleux Destin d'Amélie Poulain. For those of you who don't know, the writer-director of that film is Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who had a background in animation before working on the live-action feature films that more of us know him for today. I Love Boosters leans into a more heightened, cartoonish visual presentation in every aspect of how things are put together. The fashion is bold, the editing, the concepts, the genre bending and blending, even the way some of the performances are put together. It's making the most of what is possible to achieve in the film medium. I don't believe that films should be a monolith, but I personally tend to be more positive towards films if they're willing to lean into a more heightened delivery and presentation. But it really does depend on the story. If it needs to be something more natural and true to life as life actually exists, there's room for that as well. But also there's a difference between a documentary versus a fictional feature film. If it's art you are creating that is a visual medium, why not be artistic? One of many reasons why I tend to reject a lot of direct-to-streaming releases is that it's often slop and forgettable. There's hardly any long-lasting footprint, artistically speaking, in the vast majority of these direct-to-streaming releases, even the ones that have enormous budgets. There are exceptions to this, of course. Boots Riley has created a streaming series called I'm a Virgo, which was his previous release before I Love Boosters, and because Boots Riley is so creative and purposeful with the artistic, visual, narrative, and thematic choices, that series still stands out, regardless of it being platformed by a mega corporation like Amazon on their streaming platform of Prime Video. I Love Boosters has the animation, actually, I think it might be claymation to be more precise, but when some of the villainous henchmen, or hench people, are revealed in their true form, they end up removing their skin suits, and when you see their Hellraiser-esque musculature underneath, those versions of their characters are shown through this practical art form. No wonder Guillermo del Toro has been helping to showcase this film by doing at least one of those promotional conversation events with Boots Riley to promote I Love Boosters. Guillermo del Toro also loves his toys, and there's a point in I Love Boosters where you have a high-speed car chase scene, and this was achieved within the parameter of the film's modest budget. What they ended up doing was having this high-speed car chase scene achieved by having toy cars, or a toy car, zooming through the streets of the Bay Area, except it's a set that has been built. It's not unlike things you might have seen for various Gojira films. And the fact that it is apparent that you're looking at a toy car, it makes it all the more charming to watch. If we look at the relationships within the core group of the Velvet Gang, there's a deep level of care for one another. What they're doing is risky and grows increasingly dangerous the more that their stunts gain media attention. You can see how the Metro Designers stores begin to add armed security to play guard. Initially, the booster gang consists of 3 friends, all women from Oakland, but eventually they end up recruiting Jun-Hoo to join as well when she ends up successfully robbing the Metro Designers store that they themselves were about to rob. Jun-Hoo is Chinese and ended up in the Bay Area because she and her family work at one of the factories Metro Designers uses. The workers there are trying to get better working conditions and wages, but billionaire Christy Smith has been refusing to agree to their terms. Jun-Hoo and her brother discovered some of the tech guys who work at this company working on some devices that can do a couple of things, including but not limited to teleportation. Jun-Hoo and her brother stole the devices, et voila, she ended up in the Bay Area with a vow to get revenge against Christy Smith. This arc of seemingly different goals and issues being addressed proves to be very compelling because ultimately the issues are not actually different whatsoever. It's all the same struggle of no war but class war, of workers of the world uniting, and anyone that's a fan of Boots Riley would have already been able to tell that this would be the inevitable outcome. There was also another not quite member of the group, Violetta, played by Eiza González, and we more or less know that this is the character Melissa Barrera was offered to play. It was the first job she was offered after being blacklisted for her support of Palestine, but Melissa ended up accepting a job on a show called The Copenhagen Test, which I personally haven't seen because, among other things, it's a streaming series on a platform that I don't have. I dearly hope that Melissa will get to be in whatever project Boots Riley is doing next. I also want to make another casting request for no other reason than this is my platform on which I can share my opinions about entertainment fiction, so I might as well do so here. Can we please have the next Boots Riley villain played by Guy Pearce? I know that diva would absolutely devour a Boots Riley villain role. The vibes would be immaculate. There's a rather memorable subplot in this story, or maybe not a subplot, but a branch of the tree that is the entire narrative itself. There's this man with a pinky ring. He's played by LaKeith Stanfield. He is shown in detail to be a demon who sucks people's souls out of them. How does he achieve this? By visiting them downtown in the Netherlands. Pinky Ring and Corvette, that's Keke Palmer's character, they strike up something of a vibe. There's yearning looks, a bit of tension, but ultimately the way their arc plays out is that Pinky Ring tells Corvette that true love will turn him into a human. Corvette ends up turning him down because she cannot be in a relationship where she cannot receive visits downtown to the Netherlands. If you take the story and its larger-than-life, genre-blending concepts at face value, you might be saddened by this outcome because there's a very old, ingrained trope and idea in fairy tales and in archaic romantic fiction that true love from a woman can change a man's worst qualities. But in Boots Riley's world, it is not a woman's responsibility to make a man better, to fix a man. There's also no way of knowing if Pinky Ring is telling the truth about this, so this may very well be representative of how sometimes people are just toxic and lying to you, and you shouldn't fall for their sweet words. Furthermore, a woman should not have to be in a relationship without regular visits downtown to the Netherlands. No matter which aspect of this you're honing in on, I really enjoyed the way Boots Riley went about addressing these things and putting them into his story. Circling back to the primary conflict, though, the boosters versus a fashion megacorporation, the workers versus a billionaire. It's revealed that the $100,000 suits that the Velvet Gang has been hearing about are actually skin suits that are worn by different prominent figures, and the people who wear them are part of a think tank. I'm not surprised that a Boots Riley movie would call out think tanks, but I do want to emphasize that I fully welcome this. The other villains of the story, a billionaire, a manager who enforces the status quo, the cops, security forces who attack workers who are demanding better wages and working conditions. Those are things I've seen more often addressed, but a think tank? Truly, the think tanks do not get enough backlash. Boots Riley, he will quite literally rip off their masks for our entertainment and reveal the inner machinations of how systemic inequality comes to be propagandized and institutionalized to this massive extent. Finally, the team ends up working together to use the devices, set them to situational acceleration if memory serves correctly, I would have liked to see this more than once, but you know, the cinemas really needed the rooms in their theaters to play their mid-corporate IP products. I mean, movies! These devices are used to accelerate the energy that's already building among the crowd in attendance at a Metro Designers runway show. Violetta, that's Eiza González's character, she's big on organizing. So she's been stirring people up and encouraging them to protest. Combine that with the way the Velvet Gang is using the devices to reach out to the factory in China, and with a few simple clicks, they accelerate the situation so that everybody goes on strike. For anyone that doesn't understand that this is in fact a satisfying and effective ending, I would ever so nicely encourage all of you to read more books about labor unions, about the historical processes and actions that have happened in order to advance human rights, including but not limited to the rights of workers. It will make sense if it doesn't already. The masses collectively withholding their labor is absolutely effective. We are but a few short years out from a simultaneous SAG and WGA strike. If you're that much of a film fan, you should probably already know that going on strike is always valid. Beyond all of the fun to be had here with these fabulous women who are leading this story, the vibrant visual style and practical effects, the most important intellectual details are things like energizing the viewers to support strikes and labor unions, and to sound the alarm about think tanks. Not every filmmaker can address these incredibly serious topics and still manage to make the finished result something that is fun, exuberant, whimsical. But if anyone can do that, Boots Riley can. I will be getting I Love boosters on physical media eventually. I was annoyed that I didn't have that option for I'm a Virgo unless there's some special release that nobody told me about. Direct-to-streaming is a garbage model. It's bad for the art, the workers, and the audience.
You okay?
It's time to get loose!